professionals who seek every single day to get it right for every child. As the next government considers its priorities for childcare, I would really urge them to continue putting childcare providers' voices at the heart of those discussions.
Thank you. Question number 5, Douglas Ross.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what its response is to comments by the Scottish Information Commissioner, who stated in relation to the Government's handling of information concerning the salmon files, and I quote, "I can no longer trust the Government to handle this information unsupervised and will explore more intrusive options to ensure compliance."
Minister Graham Day.
Presiding Officer, as the First Minister set out in the Chamber on the 19th of March, the Scottish Government has answered more than 13,000 freedom of information requests since the start of 24-25, 95% of which have been responded to in time. The Commissioner has raised compliance concerns about 2 of those cases. One relates to a delay in compliance due to the need to adhere to court orders and the scale and complexity of the material involved. The other is about the interpretation of the scope of a request. As the Permanent Secretary has set out in response to the Commissioner, all FOI requests are handled with the highest standards of impartiality and integrity.
Douglas Ross.
Scotland's Information Commissioner has lost trust in this government. He's called their excuses preposterous and unacceptable. Any other government would be utterly ashamed that this lot are brazen. They think they can get away with it. So can I simply ask the Minister, does he understand that their behaviour around this case and so many others leads the public out there to tell me that they think SNP ministers and this SNP government are a bunch of chancers and liars?
We will be courteous and respectful to one another in the Chamber. Minister.
Well, indeed, Presiding Officer, and oh, the irony of Douglas Ross standing up in this Chamber on calling anyone to respect authority. I think if one wanted evidence of how estranged Mr Ross is from self-awareness, we've just had it.
Thank you.
But to answer the point, I do not accept, I absolutely do not accept the thrust of the point that Mr Ross makes. This government has an excellent track record in responding to FOIs. The 2 FOIs in question, one of them concerned a huge amount of data that had to be released, and released on the basis of protecting the identity of individuals. And the other one, I remind Mr Ross, was this government very unusually releasing legal advice it had received. I think that in itself is evidence of this government's willingness to comply with FOI requests.
Thank you. Be grateful if we could hear each other. This delay means it's unlikely we'll be able to call all members. I call Martin Whitfield at question number 6.
I'm very grateful, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government regarding any impact on its energy policy and strategy, and in the light of reports that Torness Nuclear Power Station is due to close by 2030, what its response is to the UK Government's new fusion strategy, which aims to deliver thousands of jobs and long-term energy security.
Cabinet Secretary Gillian Martin.
Thank you. The Scottish Government recognises rising interest in fusion energy. However, fusion remains experimental, with no commercial deployment and uncertainties around cost, safety and timescales. The UK Government's prototype fusion plant is not expected to be operational until 2040. But the climate emergency demands proven, deployable solutions now. That's why we're focused on Scotland's world-leading renewable energy potential, which is already delivering thousands of jobs, significant investment and greater energy security now, and remains the clearest route to net zero.
Martin Whitfield.
I thank the Scottish Government for that answer. So what estimate has the Scottish Government made of the direct financial losses to East Lothian resulting from the closure of Torness Nuclear Power Station, including projected reduction in high-skilled employment, impact on local supply chain businesses and the anticipated fall in business rates and revenues to support local public services? Or has that not happened yet?
Cabinet Secretary.
We obviously work with Torness, and we welcome the work that the workers of Torness and the management do, and the participation that they make in our energy security. Of course, Torness are making plans for when they will close, and Martin Whitfield is well aware of that. But nuclear fusion nuclear fusion is far away from deployment, and electricity security of supply, including issues such as grid stability, inertia, frequently control, will not be helped by something that is in the future of 2040. And indeed, it's not something that can be lifted and put into Torness and other fission sites. And I think Martin Whitfield is aware of that.
Brief supplementary, Liam Kerr.
Presiding Officer, what does the Cabinet Secretary understand to be the estimated average build cost of a small modular reactor?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, obviously, I don't have that information in front of us because we do not plan to build small nuclear reactors, which are unproven technology that have not actually been deployed at all. Again, this is unproven technology which has not been deployed yet, and of course we have a policy against new nuclear fusion.
Question number 7, Alexander Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what its commitment is to a sustainable funding package for Forth Valley College to ensure its long-term future.
Minister Ben McPherson.
I know that the member is generous in spirit and will therefore want to thank and warmly welcome that this SNP Scottish Government's 26-27 budget includes a 10% uplift for our colleges, reinforcing this Government's ongoing commitment to the college sector and our people across the country and the economy too. As part of the annual allocation process, the Scottish Funding Council will publish indicative university and college allocations for the financial year 26-27 in the coming days, and the Scottish Government's increased support for our colleges will be reflected in those announcements.
Alexander Stewart.
I thank the Minister for that response. It is vital that the public is aware of the full picture, as unless the Scottish Government can come forward with concrete reassurances as to the long-term future for the Alloa campus for its students and employees, they then will be right back to square one. So can the Minister give that assurance of the long-term financial package that's required?
Minister.
Well, as I said, whether it's Alloa campus and Forth Valley College or all across the country, this Government's stepping up of support for our college sector is making all the difference for learners and institutions. I spoke earlier in this question session about the difference that's been made for Alloa campus, that it will stay open for this year, and that we are in a very positive and constructive dialogue with the sector as a whole and with Forth Valley College about the future of Alloa. There is huge potential in terms of the economic opportunity, the need for more skills in the area, and the impact that that makes in the community, that the Alloa campus can have a bright future, and this Government will keep working proactively to support all of our college sector and Forth Valley College and the people of Alloa.
Thank you. Question number 8, Ash Regan.
To ask the Scottish Government, in light of the Scottish Police Authority's recent quarterly policing performance report showing that sexual crimes have continued to increase, with recorded rape at the highest level since comparative records began, and with domestic abuse also continuing to rise, what its response is to concerns that Equally Safe strategy is failing women and girls, including what urgent, measurable action it will take to reverse these trends.
Minister Colcab-Stewart.
All forms of violence against women are abhorrent, and those who perpetrate violence and abuse, the majority of whom are men, must change their actions and behaviours. Whilst we recognise that some of this increase may be due to the actions to increase confidence in the justice system, so more victims come forward to report sexual crime, clearly there is more that we need to do. And that is why we are absolutely steadfast in our commitment to preventing this violence and addressing the underlying actions and attitudes that perpetuate it, and improving access to support through our Equally Safe strategy. It will be underpinned by almost £46 million in funding over the next 2 years, subject to the annual budget processes, reflecting our deep commitment to tackling this issue.
Ash Regan.
12 years on from the Equally Safe strategy, women and girls in Scotland are less safe than ever. Male violence is escalating in homes, streets and online. And despite £100 million of delivering Equally Safe funding since 2021, our vital frontline services are overwhelmed by demand from victims of sexual assault, rape, domestic abuse and prostitution. While other nations also tackle root causes of misogyny, including by criminalising the purchase of sex, our government's woeful inaction and ideological obsession have allowed data on sex to be corrupted, sex-based protections to be eroded, and women to be treated as commodities. So will the government stop blaming teenage boys for misogyny and finally connect the dots upstream by strengthening sex-based protections and confronting systemic misogyny through urgent legislative and societal action to reverse this crisis?
Minister.
Thank you for that supplementary. I absolutely accept that violence against women and girls that is committed by the majority of men is absolutely abhorrent and must be stopped. However, I reject some of the characterisations that were made in that question. We are working extremely hard to do that. Yesterday, I visited Edinburgh Rape Crisis Centre to hear about the wonderful work as part of our Delivering Equally Safe strategy that is directly impacting women and girls facing those abuses and improvements in their lives. I've also met with Jess Phillips MP so that we can take a collaborative approach tackling technological facilitated abuse against women. So this government is absolutely taking action to address these abhorrent things against women and girls.
Thank you. That concludes general questions. We move to First Minister's questions, and I call Russell Finlay at question number 1.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Some say the SNP government is incompetent. Some say that it's dishonest. Some say that it's sleazy. I say that it's all three. And John Swinney has been at the heart of this incompetent, dishonest and sleazy SNP government for almost 2 decades. He defended his Health Secretary for pocketing £11,000 of taxpayers' money for iPad roaming. He defended his next Health Secretary for taking taxpayer-funded limos to the football. He defended his Justice Secretary for misrepresenting a grooming gang's expert. He defended his Transport Secretaries over the corrupt Calmac ferry scandal. He defended himself for deleting his COVID-era messages to Nicola Sturgeon. So when will John Swinney start defending the interests of Scotland, not the interests of his sleazy SNP pals?
First Minister.
Sir, I defend the interests of the people of Scotland every day of my being. And having listened to Russell Finlay's poorest hits over the course of the last minute or so, I'm left wondering, why are the Conservatives going to get decimated at the forthcoming election?
Russell Finlay.
I've got plenty more on the SNP's greatest hits to come. John Swinney, he spends so much time on the moral high ground. It's a miracle that the man doesn't suffer from altitude sickness. The truth is that this jaded career politician... This jaded career politician has become accustomed and immune to SNP dishonesty, incompetence and sleaze. His party has trashed the reputation of this Parliament, and it's the people of Scotland who suffer. John Swinney has made Scotland the highest tax part of the United Kingdom. He's made Scotland spend more on benefits than anywhere else in the UK. And that means that John Swinney is responsible for a looming £5 billion black hole in the public finances. He needs to start being honest with the people of Scotland. Tell them now, how much more tax will he take from them to tackle the SNP's £5 billion bin fire?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I just want to reassure Russell Finlay, in case he's worried about the energy about the next few weeks, I'm just raring to go for the forthcoming election and to win it well for Scotland. As for all the pile of abuse that he's just spouted out, which he spouts out every week, let me just remind him what I reminded him of last week. The majority of taxpayers in Scotland pay less tax than if they lived in England under an SNP government.
Thank you.
And the international credit rating agencies complimented. They don't like this.
Let's hear one another.
Because the international credit ratings agencies complimented the prudent financial management of Scotland. And the only person that's got any explaining to do in this Parliament about their stance on fiscal recklessness is Russell Finlay for telling me to follow Liz Truss. What a disaster that was.
Russell Finlay.
A credit rating founded entirely on the fact that Scotland is a proud part of the United Kingdom. Now turning to SNP incompetence. Presiding Officer, I ask you to bear with me. It would take all day to properly address this useless government's dismal record. It would take several days. But here's a few. Classroom violence, up. Teacher numbers, down. Police stations, closed. Police officer numbers, down. Violent crime, up. Domestic violence, up. New houses, unbuilt. Major roads, unbuilt. Hospital waiting times, up. GPs and dentists, unavailable. Breakfasts and bikes for kids, undelivered. New prisons, unbuilt. Prisoners, set free. Ferries, broken. Pubs, closing. Rural Scotland, ignored. Oil workers, betrayed. Women's rights, trashed. Drugs deaths, up. And there is so much more. And I'd like to ask John Swinney which of these he is the most ashamed of.
First Minister.
I'm left with the same question I had a moment ago. If all of that was the case, why are the Conservatives heading for a disaster at the forthcoming parliamentary election? It is because they are simply peddling a doom loop of despair, and it is killing the Conservative Party. Let me tell Russell Finlay a few things that have happened under this SNP government. When we came to office, 62% of schools were rated in a good or satisfactory condition. That's now 93%. When this government came to office, 3- and 4-year-olds got 412 hours of funded early learning and childcare. They now get 1,140 hours. When we came to office, the average number of houses of affordable homes built were 5,448. The average under this government is 7,734. And just to tell Russell Finlay something else, waiting times in this country are coming down. They're coming down because of the leadership that I've given this government. They're going to continue to come down. That's an SNP government delivering on health for the people of Scotland.
Russell Finlay.
Deary me, all that spin from John Swinney. And as we've just heard, John Swinney will always defend SNP sleaze. He will always put up taxes to spend more money on benefits. He will never take responsibility for his long list of failures. Yeah. But for John Swinney, none of this really matters, because since he was a teenager, he has only cared about one thing, and that's independence.
Thank you. Thank you.
They come to life when you talk about independence, and they sat in silence. They sat in silence when they read out the list of SNP sleaze and failure. Silence.
Let's all hear one another. There are those in the gallery who would like to be able to follow proceedings. Let's hear one another.
John Swinney goes into this election with independence again as his #1 priority. He says arrogantly that he will win a majority. He says that this will give him a green light for another referendum. People are sick and tired of this damaging and divisive obsession. They want politicians and Parliament to address their problems. The cost of living, the NHS, the economy, jobs. So why does John Swinney believe chasing independence is more important than these critical issues?
First Minister.
So this government is focused on the priorities of the people and on delivering improvements in the lives of the people of Scotland. And that's what's driven my public service for the last 29 years as a Member of Parliament. It's driven every moment of my privilege to serve the people of Scotland as a Minister and now as First Minister. And in that time, since 2007, under the SNP, wealth per head in Scotland has grown by 10.1% compared to 7.8% in the UK. We now have waiting times falling in this country. On the cost of living, we've abolished peak rail fares and we've frozen rail fares for next year. That is an SNP government delivering within our powers on the priorities that concern the people, on the NHS and on the cost of living. But people in Scotland are finding times hard because of the damaging decisions made in the United Kingdom. Whether it was austerity ushered in by the Conservatives, or whether it was Brexit forced upon us against our will by the Conservatives, all of these have damaged the quality of life of people in Scotland. And what I say to the people of Scotland is that we have an opportunity on the 7th of May to have a fresh start with independence, and I intend to deliver it.
Question number 2. Anna Sarwar.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. This Parliament is supposed to be about the lived experiences of Scots. And 5 years ago, Scots elected a Scottish Government on a clear promise to make this a COVID recovery Parliament. And let's not forget that John Swinney himself was the COVID recovery secretary. But we didn't get recovery, did we? Instead, the SNP government lost his way and took Scotland backwards. On almost every measure, things are now worse than they were 5 years ago. Waiting times, worse. Homelessness numbers, worse. Crime is up and police officer numbers down, and educational attainment poorer. In 2021, John Swinney was Education Secretary and promised 3,500 extra teachers. Instead, we have 810 fewer teachers compared to 2021. John Swinney and the SNP have failed. So after 20 years, more of the same won't cut it, will it?
First Minister.
So, in the course of the term in office of this government, we have taken steps to improve the lives of people in Scotland, whether that's about delivering a stronger economy, which has been delivered against the tides of austerity and the inflation surge in 2022. On the health service, we are seeing waiting times coming down. 8 months in a row, waiting times have come down as a consequence of the actions of this government. In education, we have rising levels of attainment in our schools and a narrowing of the poverty-related attainment gap. So that is an SNP government delivering on the priorities of the people of Scotland, determined to serve the people of Scotland and determined to improve the lives of the people of Scotland.
Anna Sarwar.
I just read out the facts and the record of failure. And let's not forget that John Swinney was the Education Secretary who marked down working-class kids during the pandemic. And when he did that, he told teachers he didn't trust their judgment, and he told young people he didn't believe in their ability. But it's not just in the classrooms he is failing our young people. The number of homeless children in 2021 was 7,500. Today, that figure stands at over 10,000. 10,000 children without a home to call their own on the SNP's watch. And there are starker and more serious failures too. The number of Scots sleeping rough on our streets has increased since 2021 by 66%. And almost 5,000 of our fellow Scots have lost their lives to a Doug's death crisis that they said was a national emergency. All those 5,000 deaths since 2021. So will John Swinney be honest and accept that this is not a record of success, but a record of failure that he should be apologising for?
First Minister.
President Officer, Government has to wrestle with a whole number of different challenges, and in the period since 2021, we have had to wrestle with the significant levels of inflation that have taken place as a consequence of the invasion of Ukraine and all that flowed from that. But despite that, this Government is building more houses per head of population than any other part of the United Kingdom to provide the action on homelessness. The Government has taken the action to invest over £120 million in the last 2 years on making sure that void accommodation is put back into use so that thousands of families can get back into housing accommodation as a consequence of our actions. So that is a Government acting to address the issues that are faced by people in Scotland and making sure that we deliver the better opportunities and the better prospects for the people of our country.
Anna Sarwar.
I think what Scots will hear from that is that John Swinney thinks 10,000 homeless children is a measure of success of this Government rather than a measure of failure. I started my public service as an NHS dentist, and fixing our NHS is personal to me. The SNP promised an NHS recovery but failed. At the election in 2021, 549,000 Scots were on an NHS waiting list. That figure is now 786,000. In 2021, around 1,200 Scots were waiting over 2 years for treatment. Today, that figure is shamefully almost 6,400. The SNP has had 20 years in power, and if they knew how to fix the problems in our NHS, our schools and more, they would have done it by now. And that's why Scotland needs change and a new Government that will fix the SNP's mess, get the basics right and build a better future for our country, Scotland. 5 years ago, the SNP promised recovery and failed. So isn't it the case that the next 5 years must be about Scotland recovering from John Swinney and the failing SNP?
First Minister.
President, one of the things that Anna Sarwar failed to mention in his commentary about the National Health Service is that since 2021 we've had a COVID pandemic. And the COVID pandemic has created significant disruption to our National Health Service. And what is the Government doing about that? Well, what the Government is doing about that is the Government is making sure that waits of over a year have decreased for 8 consecutive months across new outpatient and inpatient day cases. New outpatient waits of more than a year have more than halved. In 80% of disciplines in the National Health Service, there is no waiting times beyond 52 weeks whatsoever. And that's the Government taking the action to improve the circumstances within the National Health Service. Now, Anna Sarwar talked about the change of a potential change of government. And people in Scotland need to be really wary about all of this, because Anna Sarwar stood here a couple of years ago and argued for a change of government in the United Kingdom. And we got a change of government, and what did we get? We got the increase in employers' national insurance contributions that is damaging the economy. We got the actions that have been taken to remove winter fuel payments by the UK Government. We've had failure after failure from the UK Government, and now Anna Sarwar turns round and says that everybody was foolish to vote for that man Keir Starmer that he argued that we should all vote for. I think what that tells us is that Mr Sarwar is a man of poor judgment that the people of Scotland should not listen to and will not listen to on the 7th of May.
Question number 3. Ross Greer.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Free bus travel for young people is the Scottish Greens' proudest achievement of the last 5 years. It's a simple idea, but one that has transformed the lives of young people across the country and saved families a fortune. It's opened up opportunities to take up college courses or job opportunities in neighbouring towns without having to worry about whether or not they can afford to get there. It means families can take the bus for a day out without it costing them a fortune. And on top of that, it means that climate-friendly public transport is the first choice for an entire generation because of a scheme secured by Green MSPs. Between young people, older people and disabled people, almost half of all Scots can now use the bus for free. And the Scottish Greens want to go further. We believe Scotland can be like Malta and Luxembourg and offer free bus travel to everyone. Does the First Minister agree? And if not, what's his alternative to help people save money on their transport costs?
First Minister.
Well, there's a range. All these steps are very welcome, but the government's also put in place a £2 bus fare cap, which is being taken forward in the Highlands and the Islands to determine how that can operate. We've also abolished peak rail fares so that people don't have to pay peak rail fares, and we've also frozen rail fares so that more people can use public transport. These are some of the measures the Scottish Government is taking to make sure that people are able to access public transport and have much greater choice about doing so.
Ross Greer.
I'm glad that the First Minister has raised the £2 bus fare cap across the Highlands and Islands and the scrapping of peak rail fares. Those were also both policies proposed by Green MSPs in budget negotiations. We are proud to have provided the ideas that have saved families a fortune and that are helping to tackle the climate crisis. On top of that, we established Scotland's first nature restoration fund. We brought in the emergency rent freeze. We wiped out school meal debts for thousands of struggling families. Green MSPs have delivered changes that have saved families a fortune and protected our planet. And we know the solutions to the climate crisis and the cost of living crisis are one and the same. And yes, we were proud to work with the First Minister and the SNP to deliver these changes, because Greens believe in cooperating to take Scotland forward. But these ideas were all put on the table by Green MSPs in the first place. We brought forward bold progressive ideas and we worked to deliver them. So can I ask the First Minister, what's his favourite of the changes that the Greens have delivered in this Parliament?
First Minister.
Well, I'm very pleased that the government that I lead is able to afford a balanced budget which puts the money in place to deliver on our policy priorities. As a consequence, I'm very proud of the fact that because of the steps taken by this government, child poverty is falling in Scotland, is 9% below the levels in the rest of the United Kingdom, and that's because of the leadership of an SNP government.
Thank you. Question number 4, Joe Fitzpatrick.
To ask the First Minister whether he will provide an update on the Scottish Government's commitment to banning conversion practices.
First Minister.
So conversion practices cause lasting harm and have no place in Scotland, and the SNP Government is clear that we will end this abhorrent practice and ensure everyone can live free from abuse. We have publicly consulted on proposals for Scottish legislation and are supporting victims and survivors with a dedicated helpline that offers counselling support. We continue to engage with the UK Government to explore UK-wide legislation. However, I am clear that if the UK Government are unable to bring forward a fully inclusive ban, we will publish our own bill in year 1 of the next parliamentary session, should the people of Scotland re-elect my government.
Joe Fitzpatrick.
I thank the First Minister for his response. Conversion practices are abhorrent. Scotland has made great strides towards equality under the SNP, but this remains a stain on our country. Conversion practices should be banned as quickly as possible. Presiding Officer, I am very grateful for my final contribution in our national parliament after representing the people of Dundee for 19 years to be on this matter, which is very important to me and to the entire LGBTQ+ community. I am confident that the First Minister shares my views, but I would be very grateful for his absolute commitment that if returned to government, banning conversion practices will form part of his first programme for government.
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I am happy to make that confirmation, that commitment to Joe Fitzpatrick, and to make it clear that the Government is absolutely committed to equality and to advancing the rights of the LGBTQI+ plus community and to ending harmful and abusive conversion practices in Scotland. Given this is the last contribution by Mr Fitzpatrick to Parliament after his 19 years of service, it is appropriate it is on this topic where he has given impressive leadership in advancing the rights of individuals in our society and being a champion of equality. And I pay warm tribute to my friend and colleague Joseph Fitzpatrick as he stands down from Parliament today.
Thank you. And at question number 5, I call Pam Gossel.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister what the Scottish Government's response is to research by Women's Rights Network Scotland, reportedly showing that some children have been assaulted in Scottish hospitals.
Minister.
Officer, I am horrified by any suggestion that children have been assaulted while in hospital. I expect health boards to work closely with Police Scotland to keep patients safe, particularly children. The National Guidance for Child Protection in Scotland makes clear that all concerns that a child has been abused or is at risk of abuse must be reported to the police or social work. I have asked the Cabinet Secretary to write to all health boards to express our clear concerns and to ask what has been done to support the safeguarding of children and young people whilst in their care.
Pam Gossel.
I thank the First Minister for that response. Hospitals should be a safe space for everyone. But new findings from Women's Rights Network Scotland reveal a grim reality. Patients, including children, have been sexually assaulted in Scottish hospitals. This is utterly unacceptable. We know that this is just the tip of the iceberg, with most cases not being reported and victims left to suffer in silence under the SNP. Yep. Can the First Minister confirm whether his government will finally mandate consistent and transparent recording of sexual offences in NHS facilities and publish annual figures so there can be real accountability?
First Minister.
Sir, any form of abuse of this nature is completely abhorrent, and I expect health boards to work closely with Police Scotland and to uphold their legal duties as employers in keeping staff, patients and visitors safe. Health boards have a legal duty and reporting systems in place to record data on sexual assault, violence and aggression, and the Government's expectation is that reporting should be undertaken by health boards.
Katie Clark.
A 13-year-old girl was sexually assaulted at Crosshouse Hospital, and a 13-year-old and 15-year-old girl was assaulted at Stophill. Given the level of sexual assaults in hospitals was raised in this chamber and in the media last year, what work has the Scottish Government done to investigate the full scale of this issue? And would he agree with me that openness about the risks is essential to ensuring that we have robust safeguarding?
First Minister.
Yes, I agree with that point, and the Government published a sexual harassment guide in August to supplement both the bullying and harassment and gender-based violence policies that we have in place. Now, this guide aims to support those active in operating the leadership of our hospitals to ensure that these issues are properly and fully addressed and that any issues are reported accordingly to police, as is the obligation to do so. We've also launched a national NHS network to bring together health boards and partner organisations to explore and share approaches to preventing sexual harassment across NHS Scotland, and that will include information on data and reporting, training and education, sharing of best practice and providing support to staff and employers. So a range of action has been undertaken to follow up the issues that Katie Clark refers to, which were raised in Parliament last year.
Question number 6, Pauline McNeill.
To ask the First Minister what the Scottish Government's response is to the His Majesty's Inspectorate of Prisons for Scotland report indicating that staff shortages mean young prisoners at HMP and young offenders institution Polmont lack enough opportunities for work, education, recreation and spend far too long locked in their cells.
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I welcome the report and have noted the continued improvements made by the Scottish Prison Service since the inspection was carried out last August, as set out in the post-inspection update. I also fully understand that while much progress has been made, There remains still much more to do, and the Scottish Government and the Scottish Prison Service are fully committed to continued improvement. The Scottish Prison Service has increased staffing levels and is providing enhanced support to young people, and is also taking action to increase time out of cells through new purpose-built outdoor space for young people and reviewed opportunities for activities.
Pauline McNeill.
It's extremely sad that yet another inspection at Pullman Young Offenders Institution is telling us that we have deep-rooted problems in keeping young offenders safe, and the tragic suicide of 19-year-old Daniel Kerr 2 weeks ago only illustrates again that the state is failing to keep these young people safe, and that's after the inquiries into the deaths of William Brown and Katie Allen. Professor Sarah Armstrong pointed out in an interview this week that it's not only a resource issue, but despite the professionalism and the dedication of our prison staff, the system still operates completely contrary to the obvious needs for a young person struggling when they are detained and they don't have an adequate time in their cell. In fact, Sarah Snell in her report says young men in Pullman continue to spend far too long locked in their cells. So can I ask the First Minister why there has not already been a complete shake-up then of how we detain young offenders? Surely in the last days of the Scottish Government, it is time to admit failure on this issue. But perhaps the First Minister and I could agree that we must, in Scotland, implement a new daily structure in Pullman Young Offenders Institution, where at the very heart of the system is at the very least adequate, productive time out of a prison cell.
First Minister.
Senator, first of all, can I record my sadness at the death of Daniel Kerr that was referred to by the death that was referred to by Pauline McNeill. This is a tragedy, and I extend my deepest sympathies to the family and friends of Daniel Kerr, and the Government clearly regrets that this has happened. Now, there has been a very strong focus within Government, led by the Justice Secretary, through the Ministerial Accountability Board, in the light of the fatal accident inquiry that took place in relation to Pullman. And a whole series of interventions and actions have taken place, some of which are recounted in my earlier answer. And I want to assure Pauline McNeill that those steps have been taken. They've been the subject of analysis and assessment by His Majesty's Inspector of Prison, but that report was carried out in August of last year, and a great deal more has happened as a consequence to that. Much of the focus is about making sure that Pullman is better able to support young people and to be able to assist in providing opportunities for the necessary exercise and engagement for young people. So those steps are in place. That's what the Ministerial Accountability Board has looked at, and I assure Pauline McNeill that will remain the focus of the Government.
Rona Mackay.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I was pleased to see that the Scottish Prison Service have piloted non-pain control and restraint techniques which reduce the risk of injury to both staff and prisoners. Can the First Minister assure me that this will be rolled out across the prison estate with staff given the appropriate training?
First Minister.
Yes, Presiding Officer, it will be rolled out to the remainder of the estate. The new approach from the Scottish Prison Service to control and restraint is successfully running in 3 establishments, and I'm pleased to say that the Prison Officers Association in Scotland has welcomed this new approach, and we will take forward the approach that has been set out in the question.
Question number 7, Jamie Green.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister, in light of the reported rise in protests and rhetoric aimed at immigrants and minority groups, what action any future Scottish administration can take to restore kindness, decency and tolerance to politics?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I strongly condemn rhetoric that seeks to vilify or dehumanise minority groups. Scotland has a proud history of welcoming people of all nationalities and faiths, including those seeking refuge and asylum from war and persecution. We all share a responsibility to uphold that legacy, and there is no place for division that harms communities. My Government has strengthened protections for communities facing division and harm, showing the impact that collective action can deliver. As elected representatives, we must lead by example, ensuring political discourse is grounded in respect and constructive dialogue. That is how most people conduct themselves and what they expect from those in public office. We all have a duty to uphold human rights and challenge discrimination in all of its forms.
Jamie Green.
Can I associate myself with those words? And I can also say, in what's potentially my last question, can I wish all members across the chamber the very best in their future. But, Presiding Officer, the reality is we've seen in recent times a rise in anti-Semitic abuse and in far-right protests. And there are people who aspire to become MSPs in this place who are spouting Islamophobic bile on social media and cracking jokes at the expense of gay people. Look, when I joined this place a decade ago, there was genuine desire to find some common ground on some difficult societal issues, on gypsy travellers, on migrants and refugees and transgender people, our friends, our neighbours, our fellow Scots. And 10 years on, I am utterly saddened to hear politicians which uses language which reduces people to adjectives such as dangerous, unwanted and unwelcome. So can I pose a challenge, not just to the First Minister, but to the leader of all political parties who hope to return members to this place, that they will commit their parties in the next parliamentary term to use their privilege of platform wisely, to debate with decency, and remember that the language used in here affects people out there. Because I hope we can do politics better, Presiding Officer, and I hope we can all agree that hatred will never, ever have a place in this Parliament, now or ever.
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, let me associate myself entirely with the comments that Jamie Green has made. Jamie Green has made a distinguished contribution to this Parliament over the 10 years that he's been here, and I wish him well for all that lies ahead for him. And he's taken forward an important contribution in shaping many of the reforms that have enhanced the rights of individuals in our society, and he should be proud of what he has contributed to this Parliament. And I associate myself entirely with the substance of his question and the appeal that he makes, and I commit myself to exercising leadership. That is the way I exercise leadership, of respect to other people in our society and to respect the rights of every single person in our society. I am horrified by some of the behaviour that is now expressed publicly in our society of racial intolerance, of hatred towards other people. There are people that stand with banners in my constituency outside a hotel accommodating asylum seekers with language which is hate-filled, and it is appalling. But the point that Mr Green raises today about the aspirations of politicians to come in here, and let me just speak it out loud because I know everyone is talking about it today. The homophobic joke, alleged joke by Malcolm Offord, as the leader of reform in Scotland, is a warning to this country of what is coming our way, because there is no place for homophobia, racism and intolerance. That's what reform represents, and we have all got to stand up against that bile in our society.
Thank you. Move to constituency general supplementaries. I call Sharon Dowie.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, Air Diving Club has been in existence since 1964 and is one of only 4 diving facilities in the whole of Scotland, and the only one on the West Coast, with the other 3 being in the East Coast. The diving facility risks closure as it needs a substantial amount of money to repair mechanical and structural issues to address safety concerns and ensure environmental sustainability. This is money that the Council simply does not have. If the diving facility can no longer operate, the nearest facility from Ayr is 85 miles away in Edinburgh. So can I ask the First Minister, what can the Scottish Government do to support this diving facility and ensure divers on the West Coast have equitable access to diving facilities as those in the East?
First Minister.
I recognise, Presiding Officer, the importance of this facility to people in the west and the south west of Scotland at the Citadel Leisure Centre. Obviously, it's a matter, as Sharon Dowie makes quite clear, is a matter for South Ayrshire Council. The Government obviously is encouraging, through the investments we are making in the budget, in providing support for greater access to swimming lessons within our facilities around the country. This is a particularly specialist area. I'll ask officials to explore what opportunities there are for cooperation, but fundamentally it remains a matter for South Ayrshire Council.
Bob Doris.
Presiding Officer, for the past 5 years I have been working with clinicians and impacted families who have campaigned to get Scotland's NHS to add spinal muscular atrophy to a range of conditions newborn babies are screened for as part of the heel prick testing programme. Indeed, I've raised it directly with the First Minister in this place. This week, Scotland became the first part of the UK to introduce this test right across the country. This will be life-changing for those born with this rare condition. Will the First Minister join me in congratulating the clinicians and families, including my constituents, the Pearsons and their toddler Gracie, for the successful campaign, and would the First Minister perhaps consider further enhancing newborn baby screening programmes in the next Parliament?
First Minister.
President, I'm delighted to welcome the developments that have taken place. This has come about as a result of a tenacious campaign by the Pearson family and their daughter Gracie, supported by Bob Doris, who has been an enthusiastic champion of this objective. The screening programme is an essential part of the health and the well-being of children. The Government will, of course, explore and examine what opportunities there are to enhance that screening programme, and we will take that forward should we have the privilege of being returned to office after the election in May.
Rhoda Grant.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, but it feels a little like Groundhog Day. South Uist and Barra are facing yet another chaotic holiday period. South Uist is facing an 85% cut in their ferry service during the Easter period. And this is a community the First Minister knows has suffered from cuts for years, causing businesses to struggle. The community were instrumental in getting the Scottish Government to provide compensation. However, what they really want is to run their businesses successfully, and to do that they need a reliable ferry service. Can I ask the First Minister to intervene and ensure these islands don't suffer another dismal holiday period?
First Minister.
Every effort is made to make sure that the CalMat network can meet the needs of all island communities, and there will be local dialogue about the delivery of individual services. There are, of course, new vessels joining the fleet. The Isle of Islay is just about to enter service, which will assist in improving the capacity. There are obviously refits going on for vessels that are going through their annual maintenance contract, but there will be active dialogue to make sure that ferry communities have the services and the support that they require.
Paul McLennan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. New data shows banks have withdrawn mortgage offers across the board, leaving first-time buyers in the lurch as rates spiral out of control. Whilst the Westminster Labour Government sits on its hands as mortgage rates spiral in broken Brexit Britain, the SNP will support renters and first-time buyers with up to £10,000 to help them get on the property ladder. People want to get on in their life, and the SNP will help them every step of the way. Can the First Minister outline what steps the Scottish Government is taking to support renters and those hoping to buy their first home?
First Minister.
So the Government has, of course, brought forward a number of steps to support those who are renting through the legislation that we've brought in as part of the Housing Act, but we're also setting out proposals to provide up to £10,000 towards a deposit to give people the help they need to buy their first home. I've heard from so many young people who feel unable to get those resources together for a deposit, but what they can rely on is a re-elected SNP government to deliver exactly that for them.
Tim Eagle.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Just to remind members of my register of interest as a small farmer, it's not one of those moments of anger, but disappointment. It's disappointing that this rural support plan was left until the last days of Parliament to be released, avoiding the scrutiny that it deserves. 70% of this document is about things we already know, and there is next to no detail on the future support schemes. The few figures that are in this show year-on-year real-terms cuts, which amount to nearly £250 million in lost funding. So can the First Minister explain, not to me, but my constituents and everybody in the agro-community out there, why, if the SNP government are so proud of this uninspiring plan, why they released it too late to be scrutinised by this Parliament?
First Minister.
I'll tell Mr Eagle what is uninspiring. What is uninspiring is the implications of Brexit that his government forced upon the people of this country. And agricultural support has been undermined by the actions of the Conservative government in negotiating the Brexit that they put in place.
Let's hear one another.
It's all very well for Mr. Eagle to take issue with me on this question, but the real guilty parties on Brexit and the implications for agriculture are the Conservative Party and all of their activities, and they'll be found out for it on the 7th of May.
Paul Swinney.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Will the First Minister intervene urgently to stop Glasgow City Council's arm's-length landlord City Property issuing a notice to quit tomorrow on 7 independent charitable arts organisations at the publicly funded Trongate 103 Cultural Centre, forcing them out with £700,000 a year extra costs that are 4 times previous rent and 10 times service charges, while completely ignoring the independent sustainability study that the Council itself commissioned, especially amid the wider crisis now engulfing Glasgow's entire cultural ecosystem with the indefinite closure of the CCA, the Lighthouse, the Arches and the People's Palace. City property is out of control. Will the First Minister intervene and get a grip of them?
First Minister.
Well, I've every sympathy with the issue that Mr Swinney raises, but these are properly a matter for Glasgow City Council and their arm's-length organisations to determine. And Parliament wrestles often with where decision-making should be taken forward. And these are decisions that are properly matters for Glasgow City Council to take forward. Now, what I would point out is that the Scottish Government has put in place financial support in recent days to make sure the completion of the Citizens Theatre refurbishment can be carried out and delivered for the people of Glasgow. £3.5 million of extra funding delivered by the Scottish Government right into the heart of Glasgow, in addition to the other investments that we're making in the city to strengthen its cultural identity. And the Government will continue to do that where it has the power and responsibility to do so.
Annabel Ewing.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. A new medical centre for Lochgelly is a shovel-ready project, but its delivery has been combined at the 11th hour and, to everyone's surprise, with an entirely separate capital project, which, whilst welcome, is not yet out of the starting blocks. Can I ask the First Minister, therefore, if a phased approach can be considered so that Lochgelly can go first and a long-standing government commitment to the people of Lochgelly can be met?
First Minister.
President, I'll certainly give consideration to the question of a phased approach to determine if that is practical. I understand there are different stages at which the different proposals are at, so we can certainly consider the issue that Annabel Ewing puts forward. It is, of course, an issue that she has championed on behalf of her constituents, and as she prepares to step down from Parliament at the forthcoming election, I pay tribute to the public service and the commitment of Annabel Ewing to her constituents in Cowdenbeath, which she's exercised on many issues, but especially on this issue, for many years.
Brian Whittle.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, you will know of my passion around sport being a force for good in our communities. But declining physical literacy in our children, and I say this as a performance coach of some 25 years, is directly linked to the increasingly poor health outcomes in Scotland. We have a fantastic summer of sport on the way, which I'm sure we're all relishing. But how are the Scottish Government ensuring they will take a positive legacy impact on the health and well-being of all the people of Scotland across all of our communities?
First Minister.
That is the purpose of the investment the Government has made in the summer of sport, to make sure exactly what Mr Whittle sets out to me can be realised as a consequence of the investments that we make. So the summer of sport is designed to engage communities the length and breadth of the country, to give individuals an appetite for sport and to get the benefits of the physical exercise that Mr Whittle has championed. I think there's also some important issues about which the Cabinet was considering on Tuesday, around about the degree to which young people are using phone technology and where there are other choices about exercise and engagement and sporting activity as alternatives. So there are many issues that have to be addressed in that respect, but the investment in the summer of sport will certainly help to achieve the objectives that Mr Whittle is raising with me today.
Fergus Ewing.
Last October, the Chinese renewable company Minyang announced an investment of £1,500 million for my constituency, which would create 1,500 direct jobs initially, leading to 4,000 in Phase 3. Rumours now suggest that Mr Miliband of the UK Government is about to reject this on the grounds of national security, but industry in Scotland say a technical solution to those concerns can be met and should be met by an open tendering competition by the UK Government. So, will he, as Alex Salmond most certainly would, move heaven and earth to secure this, the largest ever investment in Scotland, and will he persuade the UK Government that to do anything other than to approve it would be an act of abject betrayal?
First Minister.
So, sir, I recognise the seriousness and the significance of the issue that Mr Ewing raises, but this issue is being decided upon by the United Kingdom Government, and it is causing no end of frustration about the fact that the United Kingdom Government has not come to a decision for some considerable time. And in addition to that, as things stand just now, and like Mr Ewing, I'm hearing all sorts of rumours about this decision. I have no clarity on what decision the United Kingdom Government has come to. But I want to assure Mr Ewing that there have been very, very, very vigorous representations made to the United Kingdom Government about this decision, which is central to the renewables future. This is one of the issues that I've raised with Parliament before, that this lack of decision is slowing down the upsurge in renewable activity at the same time as the UK Government is penalising the North Sea oil and gas sector with the Energy Profits Levy. So what we have here is a perfect storm for the people of Scotland, where decisions in the United Kingdom are having a damaging effect on Scotland, whether it is in oil and gas or renewables. So the answer for me is to take Scotland's future and Scotland's energy into Scotland's hands, and we only do that with the fresh start of independence.
Thank you. That concludes First Minister's questions. The next item of business is Members' Business in the name of Pam Gossel. There will now be a short suspension to allow those leaving the chamber and the gallery to do so. Thank you. Oh.
Thank you. The next item of business is a Members' Business debate on motion 20881 in the name of Pam Gozo on a Scotland-wide ban on the use of mobile phones in schools. This debate will be concluded without any questions being put, and I would invite those members who would wish to speak in the debate to please press the request to speak buttons, and I call on Pam Gozo to open the debate. Up to 7 minutes, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I am pleased to be delivering one of the final but very important members' debates of this parliamentary session. Before I start, I'd like to say a few words about my time in this Parliament during the last 5 years. I'm hoping to return in May 2026. However, just in case the stars don't align and the gods above have other plans for me, I'd like to say a few words and thank everybody who has engaged with me. I can definitely say it's been an interesting 5 years in this Parliament, working with colleagues from across the political parties, which sometimes comes with agreement and sometimes not. There has been many important issues that I have highlighted, including domestic abuse, the safety and protection of women and girls, education and much more. For someone who did not come from a political background or even have any friends or family in politics, it has been an absolutely honour of my life to serve the country in which I was born in and brought up in. Here is to not writing me off just yet. Hopefully I will be back after the 7th of May. Now on the subject on my debate. I would like to thank all the organisations and individuals who have contacted me regarding the very serious issue of mobile phones in schools. This has stemmed after being contacted by concerned parents from my area in East Dunbartonshire, as well as from the round table I hosted in Parliament last month, where parents, teachers and experts spoke in depth about this issue. A special thanks goes out to Sam Rice from Smartphone Free Childhood and Kids for Now, as well as Nova Eden from One Collective Power, who provided presentations to the round table, as well as the Cabinet Secretary who attended as well. Presiding Officer, children's brains are still developing, and that is why we have limits on alcohol consumption, driving and consent. They are now being raised in the world that is more demanding than the one we grew up in, and a lot of that has to be with the excessive use of technology and social media. Let's be clear. This is not just an education problem. It also affects health and justice, as we heard at the round table. Would I get my time back? Yeah, happy.
Alex Hamilton. I'm very grateful to the member for giving way, and I'm very grateful for her hosting the roundtable event that she described, which I attended. She's quite right to frame this issue in the public health context that we should do, because I believe that in a few years' time we'll look back on this period with an understanding that it has the same damaging effect on public health as nicotine did in the previous century. Does she agree with me that we need legislation to back head teachers so that we can't just leave this up to them, but actually reinforce that position through legislation and take mobile phones out of classrooms entirely?
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I absolutely agree, and you'll hear from my speech later on how the Scottish Conservatives will be bringing forward some legislation in the next Parliament. Smartphones and excessive social media use pose many dangers to children, physical and with mental health, as well as safeguarding issues. I would now like to refer to some eye-opening statistics. The average teenager today spends 5.5 hours on their smartphones. If they continue at this pace, this will amount to 25 years of their lifetime. Teens are twice as likely to have anxiety and 3 times as likely to have depression, with 1 in 5 16 to 18-year-olds saying social media makes them feel like life is not worth living. 2 out of 3 11 to 17-year-olds find it difficult to put their phones down. Pre-teens lose the equivalent of a night's sleep per week due to social media. At the same time, 73% of teens take their phones to bed with them. These statistics are shocking. At the same time, we must not forget that excessive smartphone and social media use exposes children to inappropriate content such as violence, pornography and the generation of deepfakes, for example, where girls' faces are put on naked bodies. Predators are not hanging around our playgrounds anymore, as it is so much easier to find vulnerable children online. We all know that in schools, children are often distracted by their phones, which undermine the ability to focus in the classroom. Mobile devices disrupt learning and are sometimes used to record pupils, teachers and staff without their consent. We have heard numerous examples in this chamber of girls being filmed in unisex school toilets by boys. There has also been a sharp rise in road accidents and children being mugged after school as they have been walking around, staring at their smartphones, completely unaware of their surroundings. The Conservatives were the first party in Britain to support a ban on social media use for under-16s and have long backed a full ban on mobile phones in schools in Scotland. Presiding Officer, in the next session, we will introduce a phone ban bill to ensure pupils can focus on learning and end the postcode lottery of differing school policies. Current guidance produced by Scottish Government allows individual headed teachers to limit the use of mobile phones as they see fit. This risks creating a postcode lottery whereby phones are banned in some schools and not others. Luckily, some schools have implemented such bans, and the Scottish Conservatives support their efforts, as case studies have shown that such bans work. Portobello and the Queen's Ferry High Schools in Edinburgh are taking part in a 2-year trial where pupils lock their phones in pouches during the school day, with consultation responses showing that 97% of staff and 94% of parents favour limiting phone access. North London now has over 400 smartphone-free schools, while Northern Ireland has introduced guidance to ban or heavily restrict phone uses throughout the day. We have also seen other countries which have or are considering banning the use of mobile phones in schools, such as France, Bolivia, Costa Rica, Croatia, Georgia, Malta and many others. Let's not make Scotland the last place to implement such a ban. We must be proactive in keeping our children safe while also improving the quality of education they receive. Of course, there will be many reasons for parents to say that their children still need mobile phones, which can easily be addressed, such as needing to contact their children during the school day or fearing that their children might feel excluded from their peers. However, we all know that, on balance, mobile phones do more harm than good, and it's worth sharing good practices from schools that have moved forward with this ban. To conclude, Presiding Officer, the evidence is clear. Excessive smartphone and social media use harms children's well-being, safety, ability to learn. And as MSPs, we all have a duty to protect young people, and a ban on mobile phones in schools in Scotland is the right way forward. I look forward to listening to the Cabinet Secretary's remarks in her closing speech, and I really hope the Cabinet Secretary can actually put some back and teeth into this to give us a little bit more than just passing guidance on to schools, to make sure that we have legislation, and that's what the Scottish Conservatives will be bringing back in the next term, to make sure that we ban schools in all Scottish schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Gossel. We move on to the open debate. Backbench speeches of up to 4 minutes. I call Audrey Nicholl to be followed by Miles Briggs. Ms Nicholl.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And can I thank Pam Gossel for bringing forward this debate on a Scotland-wide ban on the use of mobile phones in schools.